When the young dog tries, the wolves get closer. Most people think effort equals protection. They see a young guardian dog barking harder, moving faster, reacting sooner than the older dog, and they assume that means he's doing more, trying harder, protecting better. But predators don't measure effort, they measure stability. And goats don't follow enthusiasm, they follow certainty. That's where the misunderstanding begins. Because when the young dog tries his hardest, sometimes the wolves step closer. Not because he's weak, but because he's unfinished. There's a difference. And goats feel that difference before wolves ever test it. A young guardian dog wants to prove himself. He watches the senior dog hold position calmly and thinks, I need to do more. So when he senses movement at the tree line, he reacts fast. He barks. He rushes forward. He stretches his neck high. His tail stiffens. His body tightens. From a distance, it looks impressive. It looks intense. It looks protective. But goats don't read volume. They read emotional control. The moment the young dog surges forward, the herd shifts. Not dramatically, subtly. Heads lift, hooves shuffle. A few goats drift sideways. A gap opens where there wasn't one before. That small gap is everything. Wolves don't rush immediately. They watch. They notice that the herd moved before the dog stabilized. They notice that the goats didn't compress behind him. They notice that the dog's movement created motion instead of structure. Predators don't need chaos. They need cracks. And cracks form when stability isn't anchored yet. The young dog doesn't realize this. He believes intensity equals authority, so he escalates. He paces. He circles wide. He barks repeatedly. The goats shift again. Some drift toward the senior dog, others hesitate in between. The herd splits into two layers. And wolves are experts at reading layers. They don't just see livestock, they see positioning. They see confidence. They see doubt. And doubt spreads faster than barking ever can. Goats are not impressed by performance. They are reassured by consistency. The senior guardian doesn't explode at the first sight of tension. He doesn't rush to prove anything. He adjusts weight slightly forward. He lifts his head. He locks eyes with the tree line. And then he holds. That stillness is heavier than noise. The herd feels it immediately. Goats begin drifting toward him without being told. Not because he barked louder, but because he feels grounded. The young dog notices this too. He notices goats moving away from his intensity and toward the quiet gravity of the older dog. And instinctively, he tries harder. That's when wolves lean in, not attacking, not charging, just stepping closer to test the reaction. Predators test instability the way wind tests weak fencing, slow pressure, repeated probing. The young dog explodes again. The goats react again. And every reaction creates motion. Motion is what wolves want. A herd that moves unpredictably is a herd that eventually makes a mistake. A goat drifts slightly too far. A kid hesitates in the open. A weaker animal pauses during repositioning. The wolves don't need to overpower the dog. They just need a moment. Young guardians often mistake noise for control. They think pushing predators back physically is the goal, but the real goal is psychological denial. Denying predators the belief that anything can be separated. The senior dog understands that separation happens before contact, so he doesn't chase, he doesn't overextend. He positions himself between pressure and herd. He allows goats to gather naturally behind him. He becomes the anchor point. The young dog becomes the storm, and prey animals don't gather inside storms. They gather behind anchors. This is where goats become the truth tellers. Watch the herd. If goats cluster tightly behind one dog while another patrols frantically, they've already decided who feels safer, and wolves see that decision as well. They observe which dog the herd trusts. They observe which dog goats drift toward during tension. They observe whether the herd compresses or fractures. Predators are patient students of weakness. When a young dog overreacts, wolves learn his rhythm. They learn how far he chases. They learn how quickly he returns. They learn whether he can be drawn out of position. Drawing a dog out of position is often the first goal, because once the guardian stretches too far from the herd becomes exposed. The senior dog refuses to stretch. He lets wolves feel watched without being chased. He lets goats feel protected without being pressured. And that calm containment forces wolves to reconsider. But when the young dog lunges repeatedly, wolves see opportunity. They see emotional volatility. Volatility means predictability. Predictability means manipulation. And manipulation is how predators create openings. The goats sense it too. They don't consciously analyze it, they feel it. Their bodies tighten around instability. They hesitate. They glance repeatedly at the forest instead of relaxing. And hesitation is contagious. Soon, the herd energy changes. It becomes alert but scattered, focused but unstructured. That's when wolves close distance, not to attack immediately, but to increase pressure. Because pressure reveals weakness, and when pressure causes a dog to escalate instead of stabilize, wolves gain information. Young guardian dogs are not failures. They're unfinished systems. They haven't yet learned that sometimes the strongest message is restraint. They haven't yet learned that goats are part of the defensive structure. Protection isn't just dog versus predator. It's herd plus guardian versus opportunity. When goats move toward the senior dog during tension, it isn't disrespect, it's instinct. They choose emotional stability over emotional intensity, and wolves read that choice. When wolves notice goats avoiding the young dog, they understand something subtle but powerful. That dog has not yet become gravity. He is still force. Force can be resisted. Gravity cannot. Gravity pulls everything into alignment. The senior dog becomes gravity. He shifts slightly and the herd aligns. He breathes evenly and the herd calms. He locks eyes with the forest and goats stop scanning. That unity is what predators avoid. But when the young dog reacts first and stabilizes later, unity fractures, and fractured unity invites closer inspection. Wolves don't test strong systems repeatedly. They test unstable ones again and again. If the young dog continues reacting explosively, wolves will continue pressing. They will appear more frequently. They will circle wider. They will step closer. Not because they are fearless, but because they are measuring progress. They're measuring whether instability deepens or stabilizes. Over time, if the young dog matures, something changes. His reactions shorten. His movements become economical. His barking becomes rare but meaningful. His posture becomes heavier, and goats notice immediately. They begin drifting toward him instead of away. They begin grazing sooner during tension. They stop looking over their shoulders constantly. And wolves notice that too. Because wolves don't challenge maturity lightly. They challenge insecurity. There's a moment in every guardian's development when effort turns into control, when noise turns into presence, when motion turns into structure. Before that moment, wolves step closer. After that moment, wolves step back. The young dog doesn't need to be louder. He needs to be steadier. He doesn't need to prove dominance. He needs to embody it. Goats do not follow potential. They follow certainty. And until the young guardian becomes certainty, the herd will lean toward the senior anchor. That leaning tells wolves everything. When the young dog tries, the wolves get closer, but when the young dog learns to hold instead of surge, the wolves hesitate. Because stability removes options, and predators survive on options. In the end, this isn't about strength. It's about emotional architecture. The pasture is an ecosystem of signals. Goats signal trust or hesitation. Dogs signal control or volatility. Wolves signal patience or pressure. When all signals align around calm structure, predators leave. When signals fragment, predators lean in. So if you ever wonder why wolves seem bolder around certain dogs, don't just watch the wolves, watch the goats. They already know, they always do. And when they choose the senior dog over the young one during tension, they aren't being disloyal. They're choosing gravity. They're choosing anchor. They're choosing the dog that doesn't need to try because he already is. In the moment the young guardian learns that lesson, the wolves will stop stepping closer. They'll start stepping back. What most people never see is the turning point. It doesn't happen in a fight. It doesn't happen during some dramatic showdown. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. When the young dog finally stops reacting to pressure and starts absorbing it, the day he senses wolves at the tree line and doesn't explode, when he simply adjusts his posture, shifts his weight forward, and lets the herd settle around him, that's the day everything changes. Not because he barked louder, but because he didn't need to. Goats feel that shift immediately. Instead of drifting toward the senior dog, they begin positioning near him. They stop glancing between dogs. They stop hesitating in open space. Their grazing rhythm returns faster after tension. That rhythm is everything. When goats resume normal behavior quickly, it means stability has taken hold, and predators recognize stability long before humans do. Wolves, too, adjust their calculations when they step forward, and the young dog no longer surges recklessly. When he holds his ground and watches, instead of chasing, they lose leverage. They can't pull him out of position. They can't fracture the herd. They can't manufacture chaos. The same wolves that once edged closer now slow their approach. The pressure they apply no longer produces movement, and without movement, there is no opening. That is when a guardian dog stops being a variable and becomes a constant in the field, a fixed point in the herd's emotional landscape. Goats don't test him anymore. They don't drift away during tension. They align automatically. And when alignment becomes automatic, predators lose interest. Not because they are afraid, but because the math no longer favors them. In the end, maturity in a guardian dog isn't about age or size. It's about composure. It's about learning that protection isn't measured in volume or speed, but in steadiness. The young dog who once tried too hard eventually learns that the strongest presence is the one that doesn't need to prove itself. And when that lesson settles in, the wolves stop stepping closer because there's nothing left to test. If you enjoyed this video or if you learned something new, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and tune into the next one. Thank you so much for watching.